Have you ever heard someone say that Nietzsche was a misogynist, a man who hated women? Maybe you've seen his quotes online, ripped from context, and used as weapons in modern debates about gender. It's easy to label him as the villain in the story of equality. After all, how could someone who once wrote, "When you go to women, don't forget the whip," be anything but hateful? But what if that's not the full story? What if we've been looking at Nietzsche all wrong? What if his ideas about women weren't just meant to provoke, but to reveal something deeper, something uncomfortable, something most people still don't want to face? What if Nietzsche wasn't attacking women, but exposing the hidden forces that shape human relationships, forces like power, instinct, seduction, and control, not just in women, but in all of us? Nietzsche believes society wears a mask, that behind our polite words and modern values, we are still driven by ancient instincts we don't understand. He saw a woman not just as a person, but as a symbol of nature, of chaos, of the unconscious. And when he warned us, he wasn't warning us about women alone. He was warning us about ourselves. This video isn't here to defend Nietzsche. It's here to ask the question, why do his words still make people so angry? Why, after more than 100 years, are we still afraid to talk about what he saw? Maybe it's because deep down, we know he touched on something real, something raw, something that still lives inside us, no matter how much we pretend we've moved on. So if you've ever felt that the way we talk about men and women today is missing something, if you've ever sensed a truth hiding beneath the surface, stay with me. Because behind Nietzsche's most controversial words lies a message we were never supposed to hear. And once you hear it, you might never see relationships the same way again. Okay, before we move further, do like and subscribe to my channel. It means a lot to me. Okay, what happens when we ignore uncomfortable truths? What happens when we dismiss a thinker like Nietzsche just because what he says doesn't fit our modern ideals? We lose the chance to understand something important, not just about women, but about human nature itself. If we keep labeling every difficult idea as offensive, if we silence every uncomfortable voice, we don't become wiser, we become blind. Nietzsche wasn't trying to be popular. He wasn't trying to win approval. He wanted to wake people up. He believed that behind every social mask, behind every polite tradition, there was a raw, untamed force, the will to power. And he believed that both men and women are shaped by it, driven by it, even if they pretend otherwise. When he wrote about women, he wasn't just talking about gender. He was talking about survival, desire, control, and fear. If we refuse to look at these truths, we keep living in a fantasy. We keep building relationships on lies. And then we wonder why they fall apart. We wonder why love feels like a game, why attraction fades, why resentment grows. We blame society, we blame each other, but we never stop to ask, did we ignore something we needed to hear? By brushing off Nietzsche's words as hate, we miss the warning inside them. He wasn't saying women are evil. He was saying, look deeper. Don't trust the surface. Ask yourself what's really going on beneath the roles we play. Because if we don't see it, if we don't understand it, we become its victim. We repeat the same patterns. We suffer the same heartbreaks. And we never know why. This isn't just about Nietzsche. It's about all of us. About the cost of staying comfortable instead of getting honest. About what we lose when we choose silence over truth. And if we keep ignoring the darker side of human nature, we don't protect ourselves. We set ourselves up to be controlled by it. So what exactly did Nietzsche say about women? And why has it caused so much outrage? It's true. Some of his quotes sound brutal. He wrote that woman is not yet capable of friendship, and that, in woman, everything is a riddle. He warned men to be cautious, to protect themselves, to not fall blindly into love. On the surface, it sounds like bitterness, even hatred. And for years, that's how people have read him. As a man who was rejected by women and turned that pain into philosophy. But that's the easy answer. And Nietzsche was never about easy answers. To understand what he meant, you have to look deeper, beyond the quotes, beyond the headlines, into the heart of his philosophy. Nietzsche saw life as a constant struggle for power. Not just political power, but emotional, psychological, even spiritual. In his view, every person, whether they realize it or not, is trying to gain control over themselves, over others, over their place in the world. And relationships, especially between men and women, are one of the most intense battlegrounds for that power. When Nietzsche wrote about women, he wasn't writing a guidebook. He wasn't trying to define all women or reduce them to stereotypes. He was describing patterns, uncomfortable, instinctive patterns that he believed were built into human nature. He saw women as masters of subtle power, not through force, but through charm, manipulation, and influence. And he saw men as often blind to that power, falling into fantasy, giving up their strength, losing themselves in the idea of love. Is that offensive? Maybe. But is it also worth thinking about? Nietzsche didn't hate women. He mistrusted illusions. And in his time, the biggest illusion was the romantic ideal, the belief that love was pure, noble, and safe. He believed that men, in their desire to worship women, often forgot to protect themselves. They lost their clarity. They gave up their will. And for Nietzsche, that wasn't just dangerous, it was a kind of self-betrayal. So maybe the real question isn't whether Nietzsche was wrong about women. Maybe the question is, why do his words still bother us so much? What are we afraid they might reveal? To better understand Nietzsche's comments about women, we need to look at the time and culture in which he lived. He wasn't writing in a world that encouraged open discussions about gender identity, equality, or emotional complexity. He was speaking from within a 19th century European society, where traditional roles for men and women were firmly set and rarely challenged. But Nietzsche was not interested in maintaining those roles. In fact, he questioned almost everything society took for granted. Nietzsche didn't just challenge religious beliefs or moral systems. He also questioned the social roles people played, including how men and women related to each other. For him, many human interactions, including romantic ones, were shaped not just by affection or tradition, but by deeper psychological drives. One of those drives, which he spoke about often, was the will to power, the inner force that pushes individuals to assert themselves, survive, and shape the world around them. When Nietzsche wrote about women, he was not offering a balanced or scientific analysis. He was expressing personal observations, often through metaphor and provocation. Some of his words were harsh, and many of them were shaped by the cultural norms of his time. But behind the provocation was a broader point, that human relationships are often more complex than they appear. He believed that both men and women were shaped by the systems around them, systems that encourage performance over honesty. He criticized the way society encouraged people to adopt roles that didn't reflect who they really were. In this sense, Nietzsche's critique was not aimed only at one gender, but the masks people are taught to wear in order to be accepted. So when we read Nietzsche today, the goal is not to take every word literally, but to ask what ideas he was really trying to explore. He was not offering final answers. He was raising difficult questions. And even if we disagree with some of his views, those questions still challenge us to think more deeply about ourselves, our values, and the way we relate to others. To understand Nietzsche fully, we have to recognize something important. Not everything he wrote was meant to be taken literally. In many of his works, Nietzsche used strong imagery and symbolic language to explore complex ideas. One of those symbols was woman. At times, when he spoke about women, he wasn't always talking about individual people. He was pointing toward something deeper, something psychological, even mythical. In Nietzsche's philosophy, woman often represented powerful natural forces, emotion, instinct, creativity, and chaos. These were not negative qualities. In fact, Nietzsche believed that life itself was full of these forces. He saw them as essential, even sacred, but also unpredictable and difficult to control. When he wrote about the danger of idealizing women, he may have also been warning against the human tendency to romanticize and oversimplify the powerful aspects of existence. This symbolic view of woman was closely tied to Nietzsche's ideas about truth. He believed that truth was not simple or comforting. It was wild, uncomfortable, and often hidden behind illusions. In this way, woman became a symbol for the mysterious side of life, something beautiful, but also something that challenges our desire for order and certainty. This doesn't mean that Nietzsche's language wasn't provocative. It certainly was. But when we read his words only at the surface level, we risk missing the bigger picture. He wasn't just making comments about gender. He was building a philosophy that tried to explain the tension between reason and instinct, control and chaos, the known and the unknown. By using woman as a metaphor, Nietzsche was exploring how we deal with the parts of life we can't fully explain or predict. And whether we agree with his method or not, the questions he raised are still relevant. How do we respond to uncertainty? Do we try to control it? Or do we engage with it honestly, even if it's uncomfortable? Nietzsche's use of symbolism may be difficult, even controversial, but it wasn't careless. He wanted readers to think, to question, and to look beyond appearances. And that's exactly what we're doing now. Not to defend every word, but to better understand the deeper message behind it. By now, one thing is clear: Nietzsche wasn't trying to be agreeable. His ideas were sharp, uncomfortable, and often deliberately provocative. But that raises an important question. Why were his views, especially his thoughts on women and relationships, so quickly dismissed or condemned? Why did so many people stop at the surface of his words, without trying to understand the deeper meaning beneath them? Part of the answer lies in how society deals with discomfort. People tend to avoid what challenges their beliefs, especially when it comes to identity, gender, and power. Nietzsche's words didn't fit into the polite conversations of his time, and they still don't fit easily today. His refusal to idealize, his tendency to expose hidden motives, and his rejection of traditional values made him easy to misunderstand and easier to silence. But in pushing his ideas away, do we also push away something valuable? When we ignore voices that challenge us, we don't become more enlightened. We become more fragile. Nietzsche wasn't offering a set of rules. He was trying to wake people up, to force them to think critically about the roles they were playing, the relationships they were in, and the masks they were wearing. And that's exactly why his work still matters. Not because it's comfortable, but because it exposes the tension between who we are and who we pretend to be. Today, we talk a lot about honesty, authenticity, and empowerment. But how often do we really face the unconscious forces that shape our choices? How often do we question the deeper motives behind attraction, attachment, and the way we present ourselves to others? Nietzsche believed that if we don't confront these things, they end up controlling us from the shadows. By refusing to engage with his more difficult ideas, we may have missed a chance to better understand ourselves, not just as men or women, but as human beings shaped by instincts, culture, and hidden desires. We may have lost an opportunity to have deeper, more honest conversations about relationships and identity. And the result is what we see today: confusion, distrust, disconnection, and a growing sense that something essential is missing in the way we relate to one another. Nietzsche's words were never easy, but sometimes the truth isn't supposed to be. If we strip away the surface, the controversy, and the quotes taken out of context, what was Nietzsche really trying to say? The answer is not just about women. It's about all of us. Nietzsche used the idea of woman to explore something much bigger: the hidden nature of human beings. He believed that most people don't live honestly, that we create stories about love, morality, and identity, not because they're true, but because they're comforting. And in doing so, we often blind ourselves to the deeper forces that drive us. Nietzsche believed those forces, like the desire for power, control, attention, and survival, are always at work, even when we pretend they're not. In this sense, his writing wasn't an attack on women, but on illusion. He saw that both men and women play roles, wear masks, and use strategies to get what they want, often without realizing it. And when those strategies are hidden behind beautiful words or social expectations, they become even more powerful. This is the side of Nietzsche that most people overlook. He wasn't just being critical, he was being honest, painfully honest. He wanted to tear away the layers of politeness and performance to reveal the raw truth underneath. That human nature is complex and not always noble. That beneath our smiles and values, we are still shaped by instinct, fear, and the need to survive. And while that truth can be uncomfortable, Nietzsche believed it was necessary. Because only by facing it can we begin to live with real awareness. Only by seeing the games we play, in love, in society, in ourselves, can we stop being controlled by them. His philosophy wasn't about blaming others. It was about taking radical responsibility for our own inner world. So when Nietzsche warned not to blindly trust appearances, whether in people, relationships, or even ourselves, it wasn't a message of hate. It was a challenge to stop pretending, to stop hiding behind ideals, and to start paying attention to the truth that lives just beneath the surface. Because if we don't, we keep repeating the same patterns in love, in life, and in everything that truly matters. At some point, we all have to make a choice. Do we keep living in the safety of what's familiar, following the stories we've been told about love, identity, and how things are supposed to be? Or do we stop, look deeper, and ask the harder questions? Questions that don't always feel good. Questions that shake the image we have of ourselves and of others. That's what Nietzsche was really asking us to do. He wasn't offering easy solutions. He wasn't handing out advice. He was holding up a mirror and asking if we had the courage to look. Because once you start seeing the deeper layers of human behavior, the instincts, the power struggles, the fears, you can't unsee them. And that can be painful, but it can also be freeing. Nietzsche believed that real growth, real self-awareness, comes from facing what we usually avoid, from being honest about the roles we play, the desires we hide, the truths we find uncomfortable. He knew that most people would rather stay numb than wake up, that they would rather follow what's popular than confront what's real. And that's why his words still matter. Because even now, maybe more than ever, we are surrounded by distractions, by noise, by ideas that sound good but mean nothing. We chase validation, attention, and comfort. But deep down, many people feel lost, like something essential is missing, like they're living according to someone else's script. Nietzsche's message is simple, but not easy. Stop running. Question everything. Start with yourself. If something feels off in your life, in your relationships, in how you see the world, don't silence that feeling. Listen to it. Explore it. Because that discomfort might not be a mistake. It might be a signal, the beginning of your own awakening. The world doesn't need more people pretending to be perfect. It needs people who are brave enough to be real, to ask hard questions, to face the truth, even when it's dark, even when it's complex, even when it doesn't fit the narrative. So now the question is yours. Will you keep living on autopilot, repeating the same patterns? Or will you choose to look deeper, not just into Nietzsche's words, but into yourself? The choice between comfort and truth is not one you make once. It's a decision you make every day. And maybe today is the day you begin.